So architects already know how difficult it is to source the best materials for each project. You have to consider so many factors like budgets, timelines, performance, aesthetics, and the list goes on and on. And then after you do find the right material or product, you have to organize it so it's easy to find again in the future. And let's be honest here, most firms don't do this very well. And that's the source of so many lost hours researching, communicating, verifying, and testing over and over again for each project. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce you to Acelab, a completely free materials hub where firms can quickly and easily research, source, and organize their materials in one place. In this conversation, Vardhan Mehta, Acelab's CEO and co-founder, along with Dave Lamont, the executive chairman, share why Acelab is free for architects, how firms are using it to finally get control over all their material decisions, and the incredible impact that Acelab is having on firms' project workflows. Let's jump in.
So I'm Vardhan. I'm a second-gen architect. Went to school in New York, then practiced on projects at a top 10 firm for the State Department, which were US embassies around the world, institutional projects for MIT and Yale. And during that time, I was, for better or worse, mostly working on the technical side, not what I went to architecture school for. So I spent a lot of time with specifications, materials, manufacturers, reps, and recognized that there was a big gap in how we do the specification workflow at the average architecture firm versus how the design tools in the industry have evolved in the past like 3 decades. And so that's what eventually led to the founding of Acelab, which is a materials management platform for architecture firms, for design firms, owners to manage all the decision making that happens at the firm. So that means like what are the manufacturers in your firm library, who your firm standards are, when you need to compare them, find or equals, and how do you optimize that? Like what your firm has used in the past and optimizing those based on the criteria that's really important to the firm, like the cost, sustainability, the performance, and so on, as a way to future-proof the projects you're working on.
Awesome. Perfect. And then Dave, can you give us a little bit of an introduction of you and your involvement with Acelab?
Sure. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah. So my name is Dave Lamont. I'm currently the chairman of Acelab. Working every day with Vardhan. My background is I'm a venture-backed serial CEO. I've run 5 different startup companies. I'm probably best known as being the CEO of Revit, which I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have been using. That company, of course, got acquired by Autodesk, and I spent a couple of years at Autodesk helping that product to develop further for the marketplace. I'm super excited that I was able to be, a part of the change of the industry from 2-dimensional drafting to 3-dimensional parametric modeling. I feel there's another opportunity again here with materials. There really is no platform today in the world for material decision making. And that's kind of what our mission here is at Acelab, is to fill that whole workflow gap with powerful data and powerful workflow tools so architects can make material choices that really matter and make a difference on their projects.
That's awesome. And this is, Dave, you're reminding me of Vardhan. I think the first time that we met was probably a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I've since joined as a strategic advisor for Acelab because, initially when you reached out to me, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, please. I'm very interested because this is such a huge pain point for architects. How do we manage all of our materials? How do we find the best one? Where do we find the information? Because usually we've got 20 tabs open when we're looking for just one thing to do. And so it's such a massive pain point for that every single architect has experienced at some point, and probably experiences it on a weekly, if not daily basis, depending on the type of work that they do. But one of my favorite things about Acelab is the decision that you made very early on that it's free. It's free for architects. So can you speak a little bit about that process and that decision?
I'll actually let Dave take that one just because he feels very strongly about how that relates back to our mission. I do feel very
strongly about this. Look, if we're going to help the industry make material choices that matter, we need to remove all the barriers from using our product. With that said, we're not a philanthropic organization. We want to help the architects and designers do the best job they can. Our business model is having manufacturers pay for subscriptions in the platform. But one of the things that makes us unique is that all manufacturers are in the platform. All manufacturers will come up in our searches, whether they pay us or not. There are some opportunities for manufacturers to have their reps listed and have direct conversations in the platform if they are partners of ours. But we want to give the architect the full selection of what the best choices are, whether it's based on performance or sustainability or cost. We want to help them find the best possible product solutions for their projects. And as we said, we've made it free for architects and designers. And, we hope that, right now we really have 15,000 firms involved in the product. We hope every firm is involved. And what's really exciting is the adoption by many of the major firms in the country now, seeing that the tools we have to help them manage knowledge in their firm is something they've been searching for a long time. So it's getting very exciting for us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
One thing I'll add to that, Tyler, the challenges that you listed earlier, is that while architects face all of those challenges related to material management on a regular basis, it's not something we get paid for. We don't
Right.
get paid to choose the best product on a project, right? Like we just have to do this research. But then due to the fact that it's not really a billable hour, you're not really incentivized to spend half of your day going through hundreds of manufacturers' websites in order to make a superior decision. And you are incentivized to just keep repeating what you've used in the past because you know it, you know how to detail it, render it, and so on. And so for us, it was actually really important as a team of practicing architects that apart from the platform being free, we make the platform not pay to play on the manufacturer side. That's something we all experience very deeply where there were tools available to architects for free. But the catch was you can only find information for the manufacturers that have a relationship with that platform. And we felt very strongly that while manufacturers should be given a direct highway, their reps should be able to support architects when the architect reaches out to them to get price quotes, lead times, samples, any help that they need on an active project. We need to get all the manufacturers in one place so that the incentive for the architect to use Acelab is that they can just find all that information in one single source of truth for data related to products and manufacturers, as opposed to having to do their own research on hundreds of scattered sources.
Yeah. I can only imagine how much data your team has had to process and continues to have to process to get all of the products kind of into one place. And I know it's always in work in progress, but I just love that approach that it's not only manufacturers that are paying to be in, but you really are giving access to all of them so that you can trust that when you're using Acelab, you are able to find the best product for your project, regardless of whether or not they've bought into Acelab themselves or not. And I want to kind of rewind back on it because there's not a gotcha moment, right? It's not like a get started for free situation. It's literally free and always free, no matter what. Am I understanding that correctly?
The base capabilities of the platform, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is very comprehensive, will always be free. We may come up with partnerships where we embed third-party calculators or some very advanced features that architects will have an option to subscribe to, but the base functionality will always be free, and there won't be a gotcha there at all.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think everyone will love to hear that coming from the world that we kind of come into in the way that most architecture software is. So that's awesome to hear. Let's talk about what's happening now. It's a really exciting time at Acelab. What kind of things are here now and on the horizon?
Yeah, so we just launched the Materials Hub, which is an end-to-end workflow platform for any architecture firm to utilize this very technical, robust database that we've built. So just to give you a frame of reference, that there's 8,000 manufacturers in the system. That's effectively every single manufacturer making interior and exterior products that's already in Acelab's database, which roughly equates to 125,000 products in the system as well. So 9 out of 10 times an architect needs to research, needs to compare a manufacturer to others. That data has already been added to Acelab, and our team is researching that information on a regular basis to keep that up to date. Architecture firms are utilizing this data to create their firm library, so they can load in their specs, drawing sets, and then our AI detects which products have been used by that firm in the past. So that's a record of all the decision making that's happened at the firm in the past. And then on top of that, we built a set of workflow tools. Architecture firms can set up a template if they do projects which are primary in the healthcare and institutional space. They can have a template for healthcare and for institutional. We have some architecture firms now we're working with that have several offices across the country. And of course, the products you use are very dependent on the location. And so now they're using the templates as a way to create the standards by the office location. So if you're doing a project in Denver, the products you're using are probably very different from the ones your office uses in New York. On top of that, you can add any of the products in your firm library to compare them and to get Acelab, like our AI's recommendations on what might be other manufacturers to consider. And you don't have to do that by manually researching these manufacturers, but it's as simple as adding two or three of them into a table to instantly be able to compare them apples to apples. And you're seeing all the design options available, all the technical data, all the certification information, sustainability metrics, downloads like the CAD, BIM, and so on, all in one place. And then you can share that with folks inside your firm. And then finally, to wrap up the workflow, you can also automate the schedules. Very soon in the future, you would be able to automate, so like the documentation or the deliverables that are required by an architecture firm. And then we're just about to launch an integration for BIM so that in real time, all your research on Acelab, all the decision making that's happening for materials is also synced with your BIM files.
So Tyler, what's really important here is that most firms have been struggling with this whole issue of building a library of standards. And they've used spreadsheets and SharePoint and all sorts of methods. And despite the best of intentions, those have failed for a couple of reasons. One is they didn't have the data. We have the data. So when a library gets loaded, it's inheriting all the technical information that we've accumulated about each product. And the other is they haven't had a way to move from the library into a project, to make the library come alive as a useful tool for the firm. So it sort of gets built and then not kept up to date and then sort of abandoned over time, like a lot of good ideas. Here we're seeing, because we're hosting these libraries with our data and allowing workflow tools that allow you to take the standards out of the library that are the best choices to start the project, and then use our powerful search to find innovative product solutions for the other products that are needed on the project. Now we've got a complete sort of end-to-end solution for material selection. And what's exciting is that we're helping firms, by the way, load these libraries, right now at no cost. And when we get a set of documents from them, obviously the documents are related to past projects. Now firms are getting an historical record of where did I use these products before on which projects. And our library is very comprehensive with lots of wonderful adjustable fields where you can put all the commentary on what worked, what didn't work, what manufacturer was easy to deal with, who are the rep names from the manufacturers, what BIM files do I have, what inspirational images do I have, all of that in one place. And so if you're a young person joining the firm, if you're a remote person, you now have access to the same material knowledge that the most experienced person in that firm has. And the ability to drive standards, throughout your projects is preserved and evolves as you learn new things on the next project, as you get a better standard for the next project. And so I think it's the right time and right place for this to work now for the industry.
Yeah. I love the idea of it, impacting. It's not just kind of impacting the decision maker, so to say, right? Like this has an impact on the entire team. Has that been, is that kind of a continual thing that you're hearing from customers? It's like this realization that, wow, this is easy. It's accessible now. We don't need a whole crew, or we don't need someone spending like their entire like full time, keeping up with our materials library, or we don't have to, try to make up for it like once a month, but we actually have this. It almost sounds like what they get, the library that they're able to build in Acelab is kind of like, this living real-time reference point for them.
Living and evolving are the key words. And we're using AI technology to load these libraries very quickly for them. So now the way you keep it up to date is by using Material Hub project after project. Because when you use it on projects, then you can just save it back to the firm library, and now you've got a record of what worked or what didn't work, and in what use case, what jurisdiction, etc. The other thing that we've added now in the first installment of Material Hub is AI-powered search. So literally, you can ask us anything now. So we have all this data. The secret sauce here is that we've spent years building sort of a language of materials in the background. So we have a taxonomy built around aesthetics, around performance, around sustainability, certifications, frameworks. All of that information is related in a language that we have in our database. And now you can be asking us, I need a window that meets these performance characteristics, made of aluminum, that meets Miami-Dade certification. And we're going to cull through all those attributes and return a set of answers that apply to what you asked. So this is now using natural language, the way people talk to each other, the way people would talk to their spec writer when they have a problem, unlocking the power of all the work we've done with the language of materials we've built in the background over the last several years.
And to tie that back to your point, Tyler, I think one thing that was super important for us as we were like building this AI technology, actually two things. One was that really being thoughtful about why would an architect trust this Acelab's AI search more than a Chat GPT, Gemini, all of the above. And for us, the answer, again, to Dave's point, is that we are the ones curating data. And by we, I mean a team of architects.
Yeah.
So the hallucinations that happen in ChatGPT, I think all architects have had pretty negative experiences sometimes where you ask it something and then the answer is so horribly wrong that it makes you think like if you should even like use that ever again. And I do think eventually with technology, with advancements in AI, that may get resolved. But I think for us, like we just like recognize that that data plays a huge role. The second thing for us was making sure that this AI search is equally as valuable for the, the technical Yoda at any architecture firm that every junior architect goes to anytime they need help to make a detail, resolve a drawing, have a question from a manufacturer to answer, and so on. But then also for the junior architects that are just entering the practice and want to learn more. And they want to get like more deeper on the sustainability, the technical sides, their knowledge of the materials. And so if you are even a librarian, I think like some architecture firms have librarians, this world is so vast that no librarian can truly know every single manufacturer that's available. But if they have a shortcut to find the answers based on what they're looking for, what they need to find a substitute for, an alternative, value engineer it, and so on. We've like really organized that data. We've done the work to create this language in which an architect can ask Acelab anything about a manufacturer or a product.
That's amazing. And I think now that I can just imagine like our architects are listening to this. They're currently like salivating. And if they haven't, they probably have another tab open right now where they've already opened up Acelab. They're jumping in, they're signing in, they're getting started. And if you haven't yet, now is the time. Open up that tab while I'm on a monologue at the moment. But I'd love to understand now that you have, like we've talked about what you can do with it and all of these amazing, features and functionalities that you have. I'm curious to hear more about like how is this impacting how architects are working with their clients, with their projects, with their team. What's that look like today?
Well, the key here is that we've built all these capabilities for collaboration into the platform. So material decisions are not made in a vacuum. If you found a new type of cladding that the contractor never installed before, you're going to have to get their buy-in. And if you don't get their buy-in early in the process, then it could be taken out at the very end. And then people are scrambling to find a solution that meets the requirements. Owners, whose brands are very important to them, need to weigh in on the finishes perhaps. And so all of the views in our schedules, in the comparison views that Vardhan talked about, can all be shared in a package that then allow folks to weigh in. And then we even have fields in the system to, approved by owner, approved by contractor, pending approval, so that we can keep track and record the decisions as they're being made throughout the process. And this is very critical because we're trying to connect the owner as they care about the standards that they're trying to enforce for their brands and culture that they're trying to push forward in their buildings, to the architects and designers, and to the contractors that have to collaborate to build the spaces. And the earlier we can get that collaboration going, which is a hallmark of what Acelab's all about, the better the decisions can be made. and the more informed people can be. We're giving pricing information early in the process, as opposed to at the very end, it's too expensive. Now I have to take wonderful products out. Well, let's start making some of those compromises early on so we preserve the most important things or the most sustainable pieces of the building that are important to us.
And so it sounds like just even as a baseline, right? We're seeing, because of the collaboration that's happening here, you see less change orders, you see less value engineering, you see less reactive decision making happening at really unfortunate times in the process.
What we're hoping also is more sustainable buildings, because in fact, the sustainability departments of many big firms are flocking to this because they've been looking for a way to capture their research and get their research used on projects throughout the firm in a useful manner. And so, and that's evolving every day. New products, new learnings, etc.
I mean, I think the most important thing is, for any architect, when we're choosing a product, we just don't want surprises or headaches later on in the project. We don't want to get to the finish line and have a contractor say, I didn't realize you chose this as the basis of design. We didn't reach out to the manufacturer in time. We can't find it in the market anymore. Here's what we always use. Go with the hardy board instead. And then the architect has this unfortunate issue where they need to find a product which is still meets the design intent as the original product, but meets the cost criteria or the lead times of what the contractor needs at that moment. I think the same story with sustainability. I feel like the reason why a lot of the sustainability teams or departments from like the really big firms in the country are joining Acelab is they struggle sometimes to show the value of updating a firm's standards to healthier alternatives, more sustainable alternatives, and due to a lack of data. If you can't really compare, if you can't show to your PM and therefore they can't show it to the owner, the client, and so on, that here's the product we've already been using, or the owner or the contractor recommended for relatively the same price. There's another product from another manufacturer available on the market that actually has a way better environmental profile. And so that risk gets reduced for an owner to think about when they see these things side by side. And you see that actually I'm not paying that much more net dollars per square foot, but I'm lowering the carbon, or I'm choosing a product that does have EPD, HPDs available. But having that data in one place is actually the precursor to all of that. If you don't have the data as an architect that has goals that is like really abiding by the 2030 pledge, you can't really inform the decisions like that for either your team internally or the other stakeholders on the project.
And it may not just be carbon, or it may be social issues. It may be, where the products are being manufactured, under what conditions are they being manufactured. All of those certifications are part of our database as well. And everything's looks like the world's a compromise. I can't afford the most sustainable, but let me get something that's almost as sustainable but meets the budget. And that's the kind of tool that we're providing that allows people to make the best possible decision they can based upon the project's budget and needs.
Yeah. And so help me understand like this collaboration, right, that's happening between the project team, both internally at the firms, but also externally with the owners and the clients and the other stakeholders. Is this literally, getting into a room, pulling up Acelab, seeing what's there, or are they using Acelab to pull together more better options, like what you're saying, and so that they can compare themselves and they can choose the ones that work best? But even in doing so, they get so much, the material selection is better than what it would have been when they only, they had to spend 1 hour to find like one thing that fit their needs. Is that like, what does it actually look like?
Yeah, it's using Acelab, like the workspace of an architecture firm. They can share that with the owner, the clients, and so on. But using that as an operating system for all the decisions that you're making for materials. And so historically, the way an architect would do that is send the links to manufacturers' websites to owners or the contractor. And now it's up to them. If they understand the product, if they believe in it, they will evaluate it, or they might just like shut it down. If they can't find the data easily, it's hard to reach to the reps, then it's a deal breaker for certain GCs or even owners. The architecture firms now have a way to show the owner, the contractors, their team internally, side by side, how do three manufacturers, the products would affect the project. And that might be things like the cost, lead times, sustainability metrics, the design options, durability, maintenance, which manufacturers have what certifications, where do they meet the code, and having all of that in one place. So like really think of that as like your operating system in any architecture firm for design. That might be a Revit, it could be a SketchUp, it could be AutoCAD. We didn't have something like that until now for the decision making around materials.
And so these views can be sent off and shared, so I can look at it in my own convenience, or I can open up a Zoom call and share that view directly from my desktop. All of those are possible scenarios in the way we see owners, firms, contractors working collaboratively.
I know you guys work closely, or you and your team like work closely with a lot of the firms that are using Acelab today. What are some surprising things that you've learned from it? But I'm curious also to know just like what are they saying about the process and the impact that it's had on their firm and the way that they work through materials?
It's a great question. I think we're very fortunate that some of the leading firms in the country that also hold a great deal of influence in our practice are joining Acelab. And joining not for the sake of joining, but really having their entire teams use Acelab. I think the biggest realization for us was that tools historically have appealed to one department or one like profile of an architect at an architecture firm. So it's like really only valuable for the spec writers or only for the sustainability folks, only for the design technology departments, but not all of the above. And so for us, I think that was the biggest driver in making the materials hub, building the workflow so that there is a very clear incentive for, regardless of what you own on a project team or at the firm, how does the materials hub benefit you? And the biggest one, I think, so far that we've realized is that architecture firms were not looking at Acelab as a replacement of a tool that already existed, but it was to combine half a dozen tools that might be split across, again, these folks who are like really in their own lanes. They're in their own lanes, but then data at some point about a project still has to flow through like one department to the other. And that can be really challenging. So that interoperability, that we have this like incredibly structured data, which Acelab has done all the work for. And then since it's so structured, it's so organized, regardless of if you're the BIM guy at the firm, if you're the sustainability team, you're treating and you're accessing that same data. And you can export it in a format, like it could be for a sustainability report, it could be integrating that with your BIM file, it could be an audit of like what we've used in the past, what we're going to be using for the next like 5-10 years of the firm. But you're exporting and dealing with the same data.
You know, architects know intuitively and that they can make an incredible design and materials can ruin their design. It can create a building that doesn't last well, that doesn't feel right to the people who are living in it or working in it. So, and it isn't that architects don't care about doing the best they can. It's a matter of time. You know, we all work under such pressurized schedules that all too often we're going to repeat specs. We're going to go with what we've done before, whether it's because we didn't have the time to research. But if we can make all of that happen so easily and record all the learning so that the same mistake isn't made twice, or learning about something innovative now can be leveraged again over and over again, better decisions can be made. And, you know, I think our architects aspire to do the best designs and pick the best materials.
One thing I'll just add to that, this is a fun one, like an accidental use case of the material hub, which we weren't expecting. But as we were starting to onboard some of the larger firms in the industry, so in the materials hub, when you set up your firm library, just like you would on an Airtable, Notion, Monday.com, even like a Google Sheet, spreadsheet, anything, you can add a column and then you can like enter any data into that. Like you can organize the column, the tags, options based on what's important to the firm. Some of the firms started to add a column when we were importing that data, which was like about red flags for manufacturers or products. Now, of course, like any of the data that an architecture firm shares, it's their own. It's not shared with anybody else. But sometimes as we're like importing the data, we do take a look at it just to QA it. And you see some incredible feedback of things that went wrong or things that a manufacturer says on their website that should not be trusted or things an architecture firm learned the hard way and they record that feedback somewhere. And that's super valuable, not just for that architecture firm, but then for junior architects entering the firm. They could easily waste hours of their time or not learn about this like really important expertise, the knowledge of the firm. So that's been a fun one to observe all the rants, all the frustration architects have had with different manufacturers.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But it's kind of like the hidden column, right? It's there, but now it can just be much easier to identify, much easier to find, and avoid a lot of the repeatable mistakes. So that's amazing to hear. And for the architects that are listening in the architecture firm, leaders and owners that are listening in, what's kind of the parting note that you want them to take with them about Acelab and how it can help them and the impact that it can have for their firm?
We think this is going to help you make better material choices for your clients. Better project outcomes are a result of what we're aiming for here. And we've taken all the barriers away. It's free to join us, and we're going to help you load your library, and we're going to give you support along the way. And so I think this is a great opportunity for the industry to do as great a job in material selection as you do in design.
I have the benefit of knowing, a little bit about your audience, and I know that these folks are growth minded. They want to do better for themselves at the firms that, they represent, they start, they work at. And I feel like the general thesis for Acelab, again, for us being a team of architects and designers, it's very important. But the North Star is that materials can truly make the difference between a good building and a great building. A good building we think of as something that just meets the baseline. It meets the standard of care from AIA. It meets the cost, the schedule, and it's totally fine to keep repeating the same products and specs we have at the firm at all times. But a great building, we feel like, is why an architect becomes an architect or why we go to architecture school. It's to do better. It's to lower the risk, the carbon in a building, make it more innovative, more functional, more beautiful, more sustainable. And so for us, we think of that as the bridge. Like we think, the material choices you make are the bridge between a good building and a great building.
Yeah, I love that idea because it's this notion that not all buildings are architecture. This is an argument that I would make. Not all buildings are architecture, but these material choices and material selections are really what can give that experience soul, right? It can really play so much into the experience that the end users have with it. And there's nothing more disappointing than that moment at the end, like you were talking about before, Vardhan. It's just like this material that was so primal to the concept has to be replaced last second with something that will not have the same impact on the users. And so, I think that you're both right in kind of the same way. It's just, this is just such a no-brainer because it's completely free. It's completely free to try, and you're there to support them. And I love the mission behind it. That's just, it's an easy decision to make because it makes it so much easier for you to do better work. It's basically no extra effort on your part to get way better outcomes out of it. And so from that standpoint, it's a brilliant solution. I just love it. I love it. I love Acelab. So it's great to hear. So thank you both so much for joining me and for jumping in, and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks
for having us. Appreciate it.